Well, welcome everyone. I am so excited you're here. Can you believe we are at the halfway point in this challenge already? Speaking of believing, this is why I'm inviting you to show up as a CEO day after day after day after day. Is that 4 days? Why not just one day? Like Lissa. And I actually even thought about this. I thought about doing a 1 or 2 day challenge. But here's what I know. When I really thought about it, I was like, one day isn't going to change your life, right? Yes, it may be great in the moment, but it's really not going to bring the change because what happens is every time you show up as that CEO, you are becoming more and more and more and more, right? We're building our belief in who God is. We're building our belief in who we are, what He's called us to, and how we live that out in the context of our life and business with our time. And I hope that you're starting to feel the shift from the inside out. And I'm hearing it inside the community. So I just want to give a huge shout out to those of you who have posted homework over the last couple of days, because this is where we don't just make these great ideas that you hear coming out of my mouth and maybe even get down on paper, but this is where we actually start putting the rubber meets the road, right? We start putting this into action in your life, in your business. And yesterday's homework was focused on the value of what you do. So you have to know the value of it first, right? And then how to start communicating that to others and yourself, because this is the why behind why you're putting boundaries around your time, right? Why it is that you're giving time to this work that you believe that God has called you to do. And so you may have noticed I gave a personal video coaching response to every single person who did the homework yesterday. And if you ask my CEOs, it is not uncommon when I am your coach to give personalized video feedback, right? Or to send you direct messages. And we have sometimes conversations going that way, right? Because that's the level of service that I want to give you, because I know what it's like to try to be working on your heart, on your time, and working on your business and working on all these other things and feel like you're working really hard and sometimes feel like you're spinning your wheels, or you're just, trying to keep the head above water, or you're just, treading and treading and treading, trying to manage it all. So I just want to say yay to those of you who did it. And if you haven't yet, that's okay. Show up as a CEO, go do the homework, right? That's how you are building your belief. That is how you are growing and getting more and more out of here. And you get me for the week. So take full advantage of this. And some of you are going to choose to stick around even longer. Because as I've been looking, we've had well over 100 women who have been participating in this challenge in some way, shape, or form. And I know not every single one of them is going to, necessarily do, everything that we've talked about, and that's okay. I hope you're grabbing what you need. But for those of you who are here to say, yes, I really want to be super intentional in this area. I really want to shift the way that I approach time, not just managing it, but stewarding it. I really want you to lean in today. Okay. I thought it was really fun. Somebody shared they didn't even get through the day one replay before they saw a win. So we had been talking about the Stair Belief Map. She paused the replay, did it for something that she didn't think she had time for. And do you know what happened? Not only did she find the time miraculously to do this thing that she had been putting off for so long because she didn't think she had the time, she saw the ripple effect this had in the rest of her day. You guys, that's what this is all about. This is about the ripple effect that this has, not just in the time you're sitting down to work, but also in the rest of your life, right? And I was part of a great 1 hour workshop last week where I got a lot of great tips, but I noticed two things. First, I walked away with more things to do. Have you ever been to a workshop or a challenge or a training and you're like, oh, add that to the list, right? And maybe you're like me, you take good notes, you start doing things. So week 1 or 2 is pretty good. And then life happens, right? But I also noticed, secondly, nothing changed inside me, right? I didn't transform into anything. I just got more information, right? But here's what I know. You could go and Google time management tips and strategies, and you could find all kinds of things that are definitely going to help with your time. But are they going to shift things about your time? Are they going to truly change things about your time? Or are they just going to pretty up and organize your time, right? Who doesn't just want information, but you want transformation coupled with implementation? Say me in the chat so I know that you're here, and making sure that I have welcomed everybody in who's in there, okay? Because I don't want you to just walk away with more on your to-do list. You're already busy. You're here because you have a lot of things that are vying for your time and attention, right? I want you walking away from here thinking and believing differently about your time, about who you are as a CEO, and the callings. We talked about callings yesterday, right? That are the context of our life and business, right? and that you are becoming the CEO that God has called you to be. So I'm going to make sure that I can see the chat really well over here. So yes, use the chat because I love when you guys talk back to me. Like this is like, the kind of teacher you can talk back to me. And if there are things I say that you're like, I don't agree with that, or I don't think I believe that, Lissa, drop that in the chat. Like, let's have a conversation about this. Let's look at kind of what is it that's getting in the way here. Because here's what I want to tell you. As I was thinking about this challenge, you may think that you are here to get your calendar in order, but you know why you're really here? To get your heart in order. Yeah, I can see some of you mouthing it, right? You might think you're here to build your business, but you know what you're really here to do? Build you, your faith, you knowing this God who has given you life and breath and everything that you need to do what it is that he's called you to. And so until we do this work on the inside, all the planners and the work blocks and the workflows and the long-term goals and projects are not going to give us the results that we're looking for. They're also not going to give us the kingdom type results, right? Where God does exceedingly abundantly beyond all we could ask or imagine, not just in eternity, but even in the here and now too. I can't wait to show you some scripture that he showed me this morning. But before that, I want to hear an aha or an oh wow or a yay God or an I did this that was a result of something that you have gotten from this challenge over the past 2 days. So if you're willing, you can raise your hand and or just unmute. And I'd love to hear from one or two of you before we dive into day 3. Who wants to share with us today? Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I'll share real quick. I just was encouraged to say no. I am, a recovering what people pleaser, I guess you could say. And when people ask me to help them, it's very hard for me to say no. And one of my students that I used to interpret all the way from elementary to high school, she graduated and she started teaching her own sign language class. She is deaf. And so she had me interpret her first class so that we could communicate clearly. But yesterday, I didn't realize she wanted me every single Wednesday. And that was more than what I had thought that she wanted me to commit to. So I told her, I says, I will not be able to commit to every Wednesday. And I encouraged her to, well, you can use the whiteboard, and having a deaf teacher, they're going to look at you instead of looking at me, because they usually look at the interpreter, the one who speaks. So I felt like me taking myself out of that picture, it gave the opportunity for her to learn how to communicate and for them to depend on her for that. So I said no. And when I was like, well, and then after I said no, I felt peace because I was able to submit my test for my counseling program that I'm doing to become a biblical counselor. And I was able to get food for my family and be prepared for dinner that night. So yeah, thank you, Lissa. It was encouraging to say no. And no is a full sentence.
Yes, amen. Yay. Let's all give Michelle a high five, right? Oh, I love that, right? And not having the guilt that usually goes around with it. That's like, oh, I feel bad. I'm letting this person down. She's dependent on me. Who else is going to do it? Especially in that line of work. There aren't a whole lot of other interpreters out there, I'm guessing. So it probably feels like, if not me, then who, right? So thank you for sharing that. That's powerful. Let's take one more person. Just unmute and start chatting, just in case I can't see you. Sometimes people are over on the side here and stuff like that, so I don't want to miss you.
I'll go.
Go ahead, Lori. And then
So
Diane will get you next. I saw you unmute.
it's very interesting that since I met you, Lisa, every time I start thinking about something or you'll say something and then it's like it's confirmed. But I've been thinking about how I've been spending my time, right? And how I'm not really a good steward. I haven't been a good steward over the time. And I told you about the pastor who was saying time. He kept snapping his finger while he was saying it. But it's just like, it just keeps coming up for me. Like, I have to be a better steward over my time. And it's like planning out my day and sticking to that and not allowing the interruptions to come. So it's like you just reconfirming yesterday the things that I've heard and the things that I know and that God is saying to me, you have to be better with your time.
Wow. I love when he confirms and reaffirms. And sometimes it's like, I think we're just the ones that weren't listening, right? So it's out there all the time. I do want to say one thing, Lori. I think, trying to think of how to say this, right? What if you were to shift it and say, I want to be a steward of my time versus I want to be better at stewarding my time? Do you hear the difference in those two? Better at it, I want to be better at it, is again, kind of almost putting some of that burden back on yourself, right? And the I'm not good enough. And I've got some not enoughness that I'm chasing because I'm now, now I'm not doing this part. I don't want you guys to move from, never enough island of managing time to more than enough island of stewarding time and still be like, okay, but I have to keep doing it better. Because here's the thing, right? When we are a steward, it's not just about us, right? And so let's take that to, I want to steward my time, right? And yes, I want to be an intentional, active participant in that process because there is our part in it. And we're always going to be growing in it. Even I'm still growing in being a steward of my time, right? And it's just this intention that we put in there. So thank you for sharing. I love that. And Diane, I saw that you had unmuted. So why don't you go ahead and share real quick?
I'm just going to call things as they are. And I'm going to say, I am a good steward of my time.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Amen. Who wants to drop that in the chat, right? I am a good steward of my time, not because of what I do, right? But because of what he's doing in me, right? That's what makes us good really at anything when it comes down to it, especially when it comes to our time. So I love that. Thank you for affirming that, Lori. That is beautiful. Beautiful. All right, Diane, are you still around? It moved you down lower on here once.
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay.
I do have business hours. We talked about business hours, and I do have business hours. And my problem is I have a hard time. I've got too many things going on in my business hours, and they're all business related, but there's too many things and they're not getting prioritized properly. So it made me think a little more about the fact that, yeah, I work 8 to 4 almost every single day and I work really hard, but getting them organized.
Yeah. And what am I spending that time doing? Well, girl, it's like I couldn't have teed you up more perfectly for what we're talking about today. So first we were looking at the fact that we have time and it has value because it's from God. Then we looked at the fact that because it has value and so do the callings that we have on our life and time, now we need to put boundaries, healthy boundaries, right, to protect it. Today, we're going to look at how do we focus even inside of those boundaries? Because you're right, just saying these are my business hours does not mean that we are giving it our full focus. We can still be super distracted. Who here is super distracted, right? Distracted in the chat, right? Who is easily distracted with every squirrel, every ding, every ping, even just the thoughts that come up in your head, the sudden urges we talked about yesterday, and we talked about the self-control, right? So that's what we're gonna be focusing on today is how do we focus our time and avoid multitasking? Who here is guilty of multitasking? Right? Like, oh my goodness, we do this all the time. And I can't wait to show you even what God showed me this morning. So I'm just going to warn you guys, I've been getting Holy Spirit downloads up until the minute we go live. And so there are things I know God wants me to put in here and yeah, it's not me, right? But it's what's going out here. So let's stop and pray before we go any further. And then we'll dive in. Lord, I pray that right now you would quiet our hearts. We've probably been running in some way, shape, or form, trying to chase something or someone in our day. And yet, God, we have set aside this time and we want to be fully focused on what you have to say to us. Because we know that our time is a gift from you. We know that it is precious. We know it has value. We know we want to protect it from the evil one, but also just from even ourselves and even our inability to be more focused than a goldfish. And so, God, I just pray that you will just open our hearts today. I pray that we will be willing to hear what we need to hear and then do what we need to do. And I pray that you would get the glory, right? Because all of this time that we have is for you. And so in Jesus' name, we lift all these things. Amen. All right. All right. We are diving into day 3. Think multitasking is your superpower. It's not. It is your kryptonite. And I'm going to show you what is going to help you to keep your focus, right? With a very simple question. But before we do that, I just want to real quick address something I've been talking about the past few days. And either A, some of you haven't found the time to do this thing, or B, you didn't really understand what it was or the value of it. And so that's why you didn't do it. Okay. So after this session today, I'm going to be doing a special private session for sharing about the CEO Impact Bonus. And it's not just going to be me pitching you something, like I'm bringing value as to what are the 4 essentials that you as a business owner, you as a CEO need to have in place in order to see growth, in order to see growth in your impact as a business owner, and in order to see growth in your income, right? So like Diane was just sharing, right? You may be sitting down to work, right? But how do we make sure that that time is moving us in the right direction instead of just taking up time? Because then you might as well have just gone and given that time to something else, right? So this is not you like signing on a dotted line. This is not you handing over any money or anything like that. This is just you raising your hand and saying, yes, I am a CEO. I want to grow my impact and my income. And I'd love to hear more about, number one, what the Bible has to say about it. And number two, how, like what Lissa's been talking about and how this could work, what resources she has and things like that. So right now, I am giving you permission and direction. You're not going to hear this very often out of my mouth, to multitask. Okay. I'm giving you permission and direction to multitask. I'm going to grab the link to the dashboard so that everybody who is on here live has this. And if you're listening to the replay, it is not too late. Even if it's after this fact, you can still go and do this as well. To go, and at the very top of the dashboard is a button that says apply to access the CEO bonus. Now, I had somebody message me this morning and say, Lissa, I would love to, but I can't stay on afterwards today for that. I said, don't worry. If you have completed an application, it'll take you like 3 minutes. Then I will send you the replay, because the replay of this is only going to go to the people who've applied, because like I said, there are over 100 ladies who have participated in this challenge thus far, right? And more people keep coming each day, which is super exciting. But I know statistically, only a small percentage of people are actually going to do something with this. And that's okay, right? Like, I'm here to serve and pour out and meet you exactly where you are. So this is for people who are like, I am committed. I do want to see changes. I don't want to get off this challenge tomorrow and go right back to the same old habits and things, and maybe have Lissa playing in my head once in a while, but really just kind of get right sucked back into where I was. Okay. So I'm going to be really mindful of my time today so that we can make sure that we have time to quick take a bathroom break and get over there. But that's where we're headed. So permission to multitask, and head over to the challenge dashboard. Let me drop that in there one more time, because I saw somebody had come in since I last posted it, and it doesn't let you see what's been posted before you joined. So, all right. Okay. This morning, I was like, okay, Lord, I bet this more than enough thing is other places in scripture. Remember, I shared yesterday with you about how in the Passion Translation I had found it. So I was in Proverbs again this morning, Proverbs 27, 25 through 27. Here's what it says in the Passion Translation. Take care of your responsibilities and be diligent in your business, and you will have more than enough, an abundance of food, clothing, and plenty for your household. Wow. Again, this is not prosperity gospel stuff, name it and claim it. And if I do this, then I'm going to have, vats overflowing and barns overflowing and things like this. These are the simple principles that God has said. If you are trusting me, right? If you are taking care of your responsibilities and being diligent in your business and trusting that I am more than enough, you are going to find that you have more than enough, and you're not going to have to keep chasing circles and things like that, right? And so I'm really excited about what he showed me about an example in scripture that I'll be talking more about on that impact bonus in a little bit. Because I don't know about you, I don't want to stay on Never Enough Island or circling Never Enough Island, because we never really get there, right? We're always chasing that, right? I want to be heading over to more than enough. And today we're actually going to start talking about some calendar stuff. So who's ready for calendar stuff? Put calendar in the chat, right? You're like, okay, what was that scripture again? It was Proverbs 27, 25 through 27. And the version I read to you is from the Passion Translation, which you can get on the YouVersion Bible, I think is what it's called. There's an app. Let me see. The app is called, what is this app? I don't know. I'll show you what the app looks like. Hang on a second. It just looks like a Bible. See this one down here. I think it's the YouVersion Bible, and then you can choose different translations and stuff like that. So that's where that was coming from. You're welcome. Okay. But again, here's where it's so important we get into our heart first, right? Because the solution to our busyness is not more time. Let me say that again. The solution to your busyness, or even the solution to your growth, or the solution to keeping up with managing it all, or the solution to fill in the blank, is not more time. And it's also not more organized in your time. It's not more, having better time blocks. And I'm actually going to show you some time blocks today. Okay. That's not where the ultimate solution is. It's what goes behind it. Here's where the solution is. Ready? You're going to want to write this down. The solution to your busyness is not more time, but you know what it is? It's slowing down to simplify our lives around what really matters. The solution to our busyness is not more time, or even getting more organized with our time. It is simply slowing down and simplifying our lives around what really matters. You guys, the stats are staggering. I already shared over 70 days on your phone in a year, almost 1,000 hours a year on social, almost 3,000 hours a year watching TV or streaming. It is not that we don't have time. It's that our hearts are distracted by a lot of lesser things, right? And how we spend our time is how we spend our lives. And that is who we become or who we don't become. And that is why we have to live deliberately, if I can get that word out, deliberately, right? On purpose, intentionally, right? Yesterday, I showed you Ephesians 5:15-16, which is where redeem her time came from. And I was looking it up last night. Redeeming the time in the Greek can also mean making the most of every opportunity or every chance you get. Now, if we're thinking like the world, what is that going to make us do? Go into productivity mode, right? Okay, I got to make the most of every opportunity, every chance. If I miss this, it's going to right. And then it gets in I'm hamster wheel. I'm running, I'm rushing. But as believers, we are called to, remember what the word I gave you yesterday? Purposivity. Purposivity, right? In knowing that, yes, every day is a chance. Every hour is an opportunity. Every moment is an abundant gift. And we need to stop rushing past it and be present to the purpose behind it. And then this morning, so I'm doing a Bible reading plan. We're this year going through the New Testament in a year. So we literally go one chapter to the next. Yesterday was Ephesians 5, perfectly timed. Today was Ephesians 6, perfectly timed. And you know what phrase stood out to me when he was talking in Ephesians 6, verse 5, to the servants, to the slaves who were serving masters. He said, do your work with singleness or simplicity of heart. Didn't I just say the solution? This is I'm like, okay, Lord, you're like, how many of you were just saying, God's telling me in several places, right? Do your work with singleness or simplicity of heart, really as unto the Lord, not trying to please all these masters out here, right? Not trying to please an algorithm, not trying to please, all the different people that are demanding and wanting our attention, but really ultimately knowing who am I here to please. And so after seeing that again this morning, I made a choice this morning to not multitask. Okay, this is me being true, and this is usually on most cases, it's okay. I multitask when I'm in front of a mirror getting ready in the morning. You know why? Because I'm mindlessly doing things with my hair, my makeup, or getting dressed, and I like to listen. And that's usually when I listen to podcasts, right? But I knew this morning I wasn't supposed to listen to a podcast, even to my coach, who's also doing a challenge this week. I told you guys about that yesterday. I was supposed to just be spending that time slowing down and focusing on the one master that I am here to serve, right? And so I just turned on some worship music and I just sang to my heart's content while I was getting ready this morning, right? Because I wanted to have that singleness of heart. And no, it wouldn't have been wrong or bad if I listened to that other podcast or something like that, or if I would have scrolled social, or if I would have checked the news or the weather or whatever. But I knew it's really easy to get distracted and to start adding more things to my to-do list, right? And so I really wanted to focus in on that. And so I'm going to challenge you, right? And that's okay. That's an okay time that I say to multitask. It's like if you're washing the floors, you're driving, you're in the, you're doing something that's more of it's more of a mindless thing, I'll say, to listen to something is a great time to do it. But sometimes we just have to slow down and just be quiet too, right? Okay. So we've been talking a lot this week about focusing on what we're thinking, right? And one of the things that I did hear yesterday on a podcast I did listen to was talking about, instead of focusing on circumstances, focus on God's character. So when you were doing the STEER belief map, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, let me grab it out here, right? We've got STEER, situation, thought, emotion, execution, result. Here's a great thing you can put in for truth is put in a character of God, put in faithful, put in holy, put in, gracious, put in whatever, right? And let his character be what steers that the second part, right? Same situation, but the new thoughts, the new emotions, the new execution, the new results, right? Instead of always putting our eyes in, even though I want to work on my circumstances, I think sometimes we're looking in the wrong place, right? Focusing on his character is so beautiful. Okay. So before we leave the topic of callings from yesterday, I just want to say your calling to what you do, and I've loved hearing the value of it inside our community, is more than just a business. Do you believe that? It's a mission and it's a movement. Do you believe that? Do you believe that God has called you to this? And that, yes, there may be other people out there who are health coaches, who are, content creators, who are course gurus, who are fill in the blank with what you do, VAs, right? There's so many different things that you do, life coaches. But nobody else does it the way you do it. God has created you uniquely for this mission and this message to lead this movement. And essentially, what are you doing? You're helping move people from whatever that never enough island is or where they're stuck to more than enough. So here's where we keep going back and building our belief, right? And if we're always out of office doing other things, or if we're in our office, or we're just doing random busy work, or we're always getting distracted, then we're not going to be able to serve them. Okay. So by the end of today, you're going to know what to do when. No more wasted time spent on those random things or doing too many things. Okay. I think Diane brought up a really good thing. Sometimes we've got so many good things we could be doing. We're not really doing anything effectively. As a CEO, I'm going to help you to simplify, to do less and grow more, to get more done in less time, and to focus long enough on the right things so you can actually see the growth and the results, right? And reduce the mishaps and the mistakes and the maybe next times. Who's here for that? Say me in the chat, right? But it's to start with, what do you believe about your business? What do you believe about the God who's called you to this business? And what do you believe is possible when you partner with him? And do you truly believe, let me ask you this, do you truly believe that the person you are called to serve is right now praying for you? She may not know your name or your face yet, or maybe she's already in your world and she just doesn't think that it's possible for her to take advantage of your product or your services or things like that, right? But you are in demand, right? God has put this on you and in you for a reason. And that's why we show up, right? And maybe you don't see it today, but I want you to start believing and start praying for those people. I've been praying this week for those of you who are coming to this challenge. I am praying for those of you who are going to say yes to continuing for another 12 months together. I don't know, right, who those people are, but God does. And I know that he is perfectly timing, us coming together, whether it's because of this challenge or whether it's something else down the road. I don't know. I don't control that part, right? But I can see those faces and I'm praying for you. And that's what I want to encourage and challenge you to be doing, right? Because when we are doing that, our growth is inevitable. We steward our time with God. Okay. And that's what we're going to focus on. All right. Real quick, before we get into some actual practical stuff, I want to quick show you why I have been focusing more on the heart and the mind versus the doing things. Okay. Because there are 4 levels of learning. Okay. So the first one is tactics and tips. Who's been on, trainings or programs or Googled and you found tactics and tips, right? It's great. It's the how. How do I do this? Help me do this. Tell me what to do. What should my time blocks look like? What should my week flow look like? How do I plan out this project? Like, those are a lot of hows and they are good and they are important, right? But oftentimes they look pretty on paper or they make sense when that expert explains about what happens when life happens. What happens when the distractions come, the discouragement comes, right? It doesn't keep you there or keep you going, right? So we have to go deeper. The second level is strategy. Okay, so now we're getting a little bit, deeper. So this is not just the how, this is now the what, or the why, right? Why do we do this? Like, why do we do larger time blocks compared to smaller ones? Or why do we do a paper planner instead of a digital one, or a hybrid method? Or why do we do a podcast instead of social media, or whatever it is, right? It's strategy. But again, when that strategy doesn't look like it's working, what are you going to do? I'm out of here, right? Which is why we have to go deeper. And the third level is principles. PLES, not the principals like he's your pal. That's how I remembered how to spell principal. Like, the principal at school is my pal, right? And thankfully, yes, I was not in the principal's office, but principles are like universal laws and truths, right? Like the law of gravity, the law of entropy, the law of sowing and reaping, right? Like, these are just natural things that are going to happen. And so we understand that, right? It helps us to, know, okay, if I put in, input, I'm going to get output. What goes in must come out, things like that, right? But when the law of gravity works and you're on the ground, do you really know how to counteract it? Probably not. Which is why the fourth one is identity. What have I been calling you all week? CEOs. I want you to drop that identity in the chat right now. Okay. This is why I've been focusing so much on this, because this is the deepest layer of learning. I actually used to be a gifted teacher. And so I taught kids to think at a higher level. Most people like to stay up in the tips and tactics, right? Just I regurgitate, maybe you get down to an application process or something like that. But I taught students how to think deeper. And I love how that was a breadcrumb trail to come here. And I love for those of you who are saying Christ empowered operator, not just CEO. Yes, yes, yes. You are becoming the CEO who makes decisions. And when you get this part right, then you can pick up the principles, the strategy, and the tactics and tips. And they're going to work, right? So that's the difference that we've been doing this week. And there are a lot of time management experts out there that can show you the doing part. They can show you the tips, the strategy, maybe even the principles, right? but none of them are showing you the becoming part, the becoming of a CEO, the becoming of a Christ-empowered operator as a CEO, right? And that takes time. Honestly, well beyond the 4 days that we have here, which is why I'm inviting you to join the CEO Impact Bonus to hear about how we are going to take this identity that we are building this week, along with principles from the Bible, along with tactics and strategy that go right directly into our calendars so that we can really change things around our time. Because really, it's not about the how, the what, the why. It's really about the who. Who is God and who has he made me as a CEO, right? And let me tell you, when I finally just stopped checking boxes and lining up my time blocks and using, who likes to use highlighters and colored pencils and things like that? Like, I like to have the visual stuff, right? And I started doing the hard work on my identity as a CEO of my life and business. Everything turned around, not just in my business, but in my life and my time. And I saw that my faith was really becoming the core of what I did. And what I found in so many other places. So when I first started off in life coaching, and then I narrowed down and to get real specific to be a time steward specialist, I noticed that life wheels look like this. So let me erase this to get some space. Okay, so you see this wheel, right? And there are 8 sections to this, or 7 sections to it, or 6 sections to it, however many they decided to make, right? Okay, and one of them would be faith. I'm gonna put a cross there so I don't have to write it, right? One of them would be faith, and then we'd have all these other ones, right? Health, relationships, business, money, things like that, right? You can see against my glow there. The problem for me when I kept looking at that was that faith was just one piece of the pie. Faith was an equal portion of everything else around that circle. And when I started really leaning into what I believe that God has called us to, I decided I was going to make my wheel look different. So let me draw the with God life wheel, I call it. If you've not heard me yet talk about the with God life, that is the center of everything that we do. Okay. So in my wheel, guess what? Faith goes right there in the middle. It's like the hub. It's what holds everything together, right? It's what gives structure and meaning to everything else. And then, yes, we have the other areas. And I'm going to tell you what these are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I didn't quite draw enough. Okay. So inside of the with God life, we have faith that goes in the middle. Okay. We have family. And that's going to look different based on the stage of your life, right? It doesn't even matter that you're married or not married, kids, no kids. We all have some kind of family or friends who are like family if you don't have any. Speaking of which, the next one is friendships. Who wishes they had more time for those friendships? Right? Those people that you really want to stay connected with, but life just is so busy. And so you never really find the time for it, right? Okay. Family, friendships. Sorry, in my head, I have them in a certain order, but because I'm talking in the middle of talking about them, my head is like blanking on how I usually do them. Okay. The next one is service, which includes paid or unpaid work. This is where I would say our business fits. Some of you also have a full-time or part-time job on top of that. This could be if you're full-time caretaking, if you're volunteering, that's your full-time thing. Most of you will probably have a business of some sort, whether it's a side business or a full-time thing for you, right? So that's where that's going to go. The next one is stewardship. Now, at the list, I thought this is what this whole thing is talking about. Yes. And when I created my wheel, I wasn't using the word time stewardship at the time. I was using time management just from a Christian perspective. But when I talk about stewardship here, we're talking about financial stewardship. How am I stewarding my resources? So, which isn't, I guess, just technically money. It can also be time can fit in there, right? It can also be, just abilities and talents and things like that. Okay. So we got faith, family, friends, service, stewardship, wellness. Okay. That's anything physical or mental well-being. We all know how important that is, right? Passions. Remember we talked about this the other day when a lot of you told me you wanted to make time or find time for enjoyable things, for fun, for life-giving things, for taking the class, for making the quilt, for going on the trip, for whatever. Like that is an important part of our life. Now, most life wheels stop there. But do you know what one I added? Because I know my best client, I know you, and I know what else. What is another category that's not listed on here that is constantly requiring your time and attention? Any guesses what that last one is that I added that because I didn't see it anywhere else? And I was like, we give a ton of time and attention to this. It has got to be on our wheel. Drop in the chat if you think you know what it is. If you've been around me, if you're already in my program, if you're hanging out inside the community, you may already know. Yes. Okay. I'm seeing it. Home. Yes. And I call it dwelling. How many of you give a lot of time and attention to things around your home? Cleaning, organizing, washing, putting away, doing it all over again, cleaning up after the dogs, whatever it is that has to be done, right? So pretty much, I think everything in life fits in here somewhere, right? Would you agree? And the reason that we put faith at the center is because that's what everything is connected to. Even the mundane little, I'm washing dishes today. Guess what? The Lord gave me the food that I got to put on these plates. The Lord gave me the people that also ate off these plates with me. And he's giving me a sink in my house that I can wash my plates in, right? And I don't have to worry, for most of us, but this is not the case for most of the world, what I'm going to put on my plates tomorrow, or if I'm going to have dirty plates to clean tomorrow, right? So even the mundane things he gives us are meaningful, right? They tie into this bigger purpose. They tie into all this. So we put faith at the center. If any of you are bike riders or have ever ridden a bike, what happens if like one of these spokes is a little loose? Or if there's like a spot on the tire where it's bulging or it's got some kind of a dent or something in it? Your wheel will still roll, right? You can still go down the road, but what's going to happen? Clunk, 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 because every time it hits that spot, right? And it's putting pressure on these other areas. So inside my program, it's called the With God framework. We assess where you are in those areas, not to make you feel bad, but just to be aware of where you are. Like we talked about yesterday, is that first step. And then we look at, okay, and what is needing time and attention right now? Technically, they all need time and attention, but not necessarily equally, right? And we want to make sure that all 8 areas are getting time and attention such that, here's the rule, here's what happens. If you don't give one of these areas the time and attention they need, one day they will demand your attention, right? So if you're not paying attention in the wellness area, because you're putting all your time into your work, one day that wellness is going to make it so that you don't have a choice. And then how much time is your work going to get? Not very much, right? So this is why we want to be paying attention. Now, what can often happen is that we can look at a wheel like this, and we look at all these different things. We think about all the different tasks and all the different responsibilities and all the different things that this represents. And how does that make us feel? Too much to do. I don't have enough time. Listen, I'm right back where I was. Hamster wheel, let's go, right? Or forget all this. I'm going to binge Haagen-Dazs and Netflix, right? That's our other choice. Okay. And so often we get in this position and we wish we had a superpower. So I want to hear in the chat, what superpower do you wish you had to take care of all these things? What superpower do you wish you had? Maybe it's like Wonder Woman. I was thinking the other day, like she's strong, she can fly, but you know what else she has? She has that golden lasso that will keep things under control. So like if I could just lasso my distractions, lasso, these things that keep getting in, lasso the enemy. We got Supergirl, right? She can fly too, but she has this invulnerability to keep things from getting to her. So like, what if I had this shield, right? Where nothing could get to me, right? And I can just deflect all the, arrows that are coming at me and make it all happen. Do it all quickly, like the Flash, right? Maybe you want to be Flash. Or I often think of like Elastigirl. Elastigirl can like reach from where she is and be like in multiple places at the same time. Who wishes they could do that, right? Or maybe you're like most women and you think that multitasking is your superpower. And you think that multitasking is going to make you more productive, right? Let's break that down. Many, task, to-dos. Multitasking is doing many tasks at the same time. Thinking we're maximizing the minutes. But are we? Does it turn out like the movies? Are we the superhero when we do that? No, because here's the thing. The only thing that can truly multitask is a supercomputer. Even the old versions of computers couldn't technically multitask. They're just going back and forth between applications really fast. Now we have technology that you could literally be streaming one thing, downloading something else, doing something else. We are not machines. We talked about that yesterday, right? We cannot multitask, and yet we try, right? We talked about, they can only respond to one command, right? Now, we talked about in episode 255, multitasking doesn't make us more productive for 2 reasons. Number 1, it divides our focus. And number 2, it leads to mishaps and mistakes, both of which result in not much happening and things actually taking, get this, up to 50% longer than if you would have just given it singular focus. And chances are you know that already, right? Multitasking is not the answer, and disaster, exactly. But do you still do it? Be honest, do you have tabs open on your computer right now? Do you waste time going and clicking on them, trying to find the one you need when you need it because they're so small? Yeah, inside the CEO Impact Bonus, I show you how to close out all those tabs except for the one you're working on and still have at your fingertips everything else you need. Or what about this? Do you sit on a Zoom call, maybe even one like this, and secretly you're checking email or scrolling social or doing a little online shopping because you got that random email or it popped in your mind and you just had that impulse to do it before you forgot, right? Like, yeah, we do that. But I'm going to show you how to have a place for all the random things when they pop up so they don't take you away or get forgotten, because if it does matter, I do want to make sure I get to it, but I can know it already has a time and place in my day and week. Wouldn't that be refreshing? So I don't have to I have to do it right now before I forget, before it goes out of my mind. Or what about this? You sit next to your hubby or your kids, your grandkids with your phone out because while they're not looking, or like we were talking earlier on a coaching call with the CEOs, like, hey, it's almost football season. He's watching football. So I'm just going to sit over here and, except we just get sucked into this black hole, right? We're always working, we get sucked in, and whenever we miss this opportunity to be truly present. Well, inside the CEO Impact Bonus, I'm going to show you how to put your work and your device away so you can give your full attention to who and what matters most. Would that be life-giving to you? Like, not multitasking. You may not think you're multitasking, but chances are we've got multiple tabs open in our brain, right? We all have this tendency to multitask, but can we all agree that multitasking is not our superpower? Somebody said Superman over here, right? Oh, pausing time, Lori. I like that one. What was Superman's kryptonite? What did it do for him? It weakened him, right? He no longer could do anything, right? If you think you can spell kryptonite, you can drop that in the chat, right? But that's essentially what multitasking is for us. It weakens us. We think we're powering through, but really we're being diluted. That power is being diluted. And what is our true superpower? It's Christ in us. That's why we have to plug into him. And I'm going to show you where that goes in your day in just a minute here, AKA abide. I love John 15:5, right? Abide in me and let my word abide in you, because apart from me, you can do nothing, right? But with him, we're producing abundant fruit and fruit that we couldn't do on our own. That is why our CEO meeting with God is the most important to do of the day. And I'm going to be talking more about that in the CEO Impact Bonus and also tomorrow. So let's talk about focus. I want to give you the number one focusing question that you should be asking throughout your day. I don't very often use the word should. I call it your should-do list, right? It usually doesn't lead us in the right direction, but I truly believe that this is going to be super helpful. Who would like to focus with their time? Drop focus in the chat, right? And let's go on to that. Okay, so what does it mean to focus? To concentrate our attention or effort. The opposite of which would be diluted attention or effort, aka our multitasking, right? And like we talked about on that episode, so go back and listen to 255. When we are multitasking, we have zero full focus. Nothing is getting done or getting done well. And I shared the story of me standing on the stairs and feeling like all the balls were dropping and nothing was being finished and nothing was being done well. And I was working literally from the minute I got up until the minute I went to bed. And kind of like Dan was saying, for what, right? Where is this going? Because when we focus on too many things or even more than one thing, there is no focus. No one and nothing is getting enough of us to really get any traction to see the changes, right? So we don't want to be doing that. Okay. And it was interesting because I'm always I'm not trying to make scripture mean what I want it to, but I'm always listening for things that apply to what we're doing. And I was sitting in a sermon not that long ago. We were talking about 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 11 through 12. And Paul was instructing the believers on what a life pleasing to God looks like. So I encourage you, go look this up and look up the whole section. Okay. I'm just going to highlight these two verses, 1 Thessalonians 4, 11 and 12. And look at the context. The context is, what does a life pleasing to God look like? Okay, but here's what he says in these two verses. Aspire to lead a calm and peaceful life as you mind your own business and earn your living, just as we taught you. By doing this, you will live an honorable life, influencing others and commanding the respect of even the unbelievers. Then you will be in need of nothing and not depending on anyone. Because you see, what was happening in that church was there were people who were not focusing on the work God had given them to do. They're flitting about from house to house. He even called them busybodies in 2 Thessalonians, right? But when they focused in on the work that they were given to do, did you hear that not only would their testimony be seen by others, they would also increase their influence, aka their impact on others. And what did it say at the very end? You'll be in need of nothing and not dependent on anyone, because they would have what they needed, right? They would be increasing their income such that they wouldn't be dependent on other people. How is that for an ROI in both the here and now and for eternity, right? And that's what we're doing when we build our business, right? We are building the testimony of what a life with him looks like. And we're also providing for, the needs that we have and the ways in which we want to be generous. One of my CEOs is really focused on helping people to not just focus on making a profit and paying the bills, but on having a generosity plan, which is not dependent on how much you make, right? But like, how am I being generous? And I'm going to share with you guys tomorrow how I have partnered with an organization almost literally halfway around the world to everything that comes in through Redeem Her Time. A percentage of that is going directly to serve these women who are building businesses in another part of the world. Like, how are we building our businesses in such a way that he's getting the glory through our testimony and the influence we have in others' lives, and also the income that is coming in through that. And we talked about this yesterday. As believers, I don't think we should be shying away from making money or making good money in what we do, because if we are truly giving this level of value to this many of people, and I'm going to give you guys a formula inside that CEO bonus in a few minutes to see what that could look like that's just a reflection of us pouring out what he keeps pouring in, right? And then there's no better place for there to be, money in the hands of those who want to build a kingdom, because then we can turn around and invest it in others, okay? And this is where it's not just about productivity, it's about purposivity, okay? Productivity is quality of being productive, right? How much am I getting out? How many boxes am I checking? How much am I producing? But like we heard earlier, it's not always producing results. But purposivity is the quality of being purposeful and finding that purpose behind what it is that we're doing. And isn't that what Jesus modeled for us? Right? He wasn't focused on productivity. He wasn't like, okay, we've got to get to this number and this many people that are in the kingdom, right? Pushing out disciples as fast as he could. What did he do? He knew his mission. He knew his message. He was focused on what he was here to do. And he was intentional about it. Was he ever rushed? Was he ever hurried? Was he ever stressed if someone didn't fall in line or a duck got out of the row, or even his disciples got out of line a little bit? No, he knew who he was, what he was called to, and what he was here to do. Okay. And so what we want to do is we want to approach our time with this level of purposivity, not productivity. So what is the question that most people ask when it relates to their time? Any guesses? What's the question that most people ask when it relates to their time? You probably asked this countless times already today, and we'll continue to ask this question all day. Drop in the chat if you have an idea of what that question might be. Most people are asking about their time. There it is. Melanie, what time is it, right? We ask that question when we open up our eyes in the morning, whether or not the alarm has gone off yet or not, right? We ask that question when we get lost in scroll hole, or hopefully we should. We ask that question when it's time to go out the door. We ask that question when our stomach starts growling. We ask this question all day long, or at least we're thinking about it, because why? We're checking our watches, our clocks, our phones, right, to see what time it is. Now, chances are, when you hear the answer to that question, is it neutral? Is the answer to that usually neutral? Is it just like, oh, it's 12:50 right now? Or is it more like, oh, it's 12:50. I've got 10 minutes to wrap this up. Oh my gosh, I should be already here by this point, right? Like, that is, girl, we are chasing the clock all day long. If you ever feel like you're chasing the clock, drop clock in the chat, because I think that's what we often do, right? So I'm going to give you a new question. Are you ready for this? It's very simple, and it's almost exactly the same, except everything's different about it. Instead of asking what time is it all day long, here's your new question. What is it time for? What is it time for? In fact, if you have the screensaver on your phone, it says, what is it time for? Right there. You have that question in front of you every day, because this is one of those biggest distractions and time wasters. Do you hear the difference in what time is it and what is it time for? The one causes us to have to start hurrying to be where we think we need to be, even if we're not technically behind, right? Okay, well, where do I need to be next? What does the other one cause us to do? Slow down, get purposeful, ask, what is the purpose of the time in front of me? What time is it is often chasing that lack of time, time got away from me, or it's already this time, or I thought I had more time, or, I'm not going to have time for this, or, right? What is it time for? Is looking at it already assumes there's time in front of me. And what else does it assume? That there is some kind of a purpose in that time that's in front of me. And when you know what it's time for, now you can start putting up those shields against the distractions, right? We got Wonder Woman coming up here with her little bracelets or whatever, that she's, able to do that, right? Because if it's time to be working on your business, does that mean it's time to be scrolling social or putting in the laundry or randomly, I don't know, even though it feels connected to your business, updating your profile or something like that? So inside the CEO impact bonus, we get really clear on what are the specific actions I want to do inside of here. Okay. And we know what it's time for. We start showing up in that way. We start being present to the moment. Right. So I want to show you guys what I teach for time blocking. I almost don't like using the word time block because I think we think of all these little tiny boxes. And what I see a lot of people do, I had somebody tell me yesterday, I'm a Google Calendar girl, and this is no judgment to her at all, right? I'm like, oh, okay, great. But it's probably just a bunch of little boxes. It's essentially a glorified to-do list that lives on your calendar. That is what time blocking looks like for most people. But I teach a 5-block day. And I believe that this applies to every woman on the planet. It doesn't matter the age and stage of your business. It doesn't matter your age and stage of life. It doesn't matter your age and stage of family. Every single woman has these 5 blocks. I'm about to show them to you. They may be a little bit different. There sometimes is a little bit different shifting of order based on different, things that go in. And that's where I come in and we get really specific about where you are and what yours look like. Maybe certain ones are longer or shorter than others, but I believe everyone has and needs these 5 blocks. And they're not little blocks. I like to think of them as like spacious blocks. So I'm going to draw, oops, I used the other side of the marker, a vertical column. Let's pretend like this is a day in our planner. Okay. When you guys get the Redeemer Time Planner, this is what I use. But we don't just look at one day at a time. We look at a whole week because I want you to see how things flow from one day to the next. That's what you don't get when you just look at your phone calendar. You're just scrolling from one day to the next and you can't see how it all flows. Okay. So we're going to divide this into 5 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Make sure I had 5 there. Okay. Now we're going to start with the book, what I call the bookends. Okay. Sorry. I notice my light is kind of when I'm not in the shadow, then maybe you can't see this. Okay. These are called your refills. So we have our morning refill and we have our evening refill. Okay. So these are what I call the bookends. Now here's the beautiful thing. In most cases, you can control how your day starts and how it ends. Now, are there days when there's a crisis that wakes you up or keeps you up later than you want? Yes, but most of the time, maybe those of you with itty bitties at home, maybe you don't have as much control over this, but most of the time we have a choice over how we start and end our day. And what I teach is the first thing we need to do is fill up. Because what happens if the first thing you do when you get up is we start checking our phone and we start responding to emails, or we start scrolling social, we start, like getting sucked into all these things that we need to do. And somebody even shared this in the community, like some of the freedom that she would find from believing there was more than enough time would be that she doesn't wake up with the worry about her to-do list on her mind right away. But how many of us do? How many of us wake up and it's like, okay, I don't got time to waste. I got to jump right into this. Boom, boom, boom. You know what? That's exactly how I could have showed up this week. Like today, I literally have 3 things in a row. Yeah, the other day, Tuesday, I had 3 things in a row, right? I could have jumped up and been like, sorry, I don't have time for anything else right now. These other things that I usually do to refill are going to go out the window, but I knew I had to fill up before I pour out. So in a refill, it is time to fill up body, mind, spirit. I'm going to let you think about what those would be for you, right? For me, that includes moving my body, which I usually do first because it gets the blood flowing and the heart waking up and the head waking up and things like that. Grab my cup of pour over coffee. While I'm doing that, I'm listening to my With God vision. I have recorded my With God vision for these 8 areas and I listen to it every single morning. And I am prayerfully listening to that. And I'm praying over those things as I'm listening to it. And that's an amazing thing that I teach you inside the With God framework when you get inside the program, because there's something about saying you want something in your life. And there's something about coming back to it every single day and taking that before the Lord and seeing it happen. Like it's an amazing thing. So make my coffee. Then it's time for me and the Lord. Scripture, prayer, journaling, whatever things are going on in there. And then I'm getting ready and then heading into the day, right? We have to refill before the day. Otherwise, it's not going to be very far into the day and we're going to be on empty, right? And then here's the one, I bet a lot of you have a morning routine already. You probably do similar things, and that's amazing. Keep doing it. I want you to know the value of that. Here's why. It is not time during a refill to be pouring out into your business. It is not time during a refill to be doing the laundry. Now, are there days when like emergency, I need this shirt for today? Yes. Or my husband needs this, and so it's got to go in right away? Of course, right? But I'm talking like on the regular. And yet how many of us, right? We do all these other things and then we barely have time and then it's time to jump into the day, okay? Evening refill. This is the one I feel like most women, we struggle with. How do you typically end your day? I bet most of us sitting here, 80% of us, it has something to do with a screen. We are scrolling or we are binging or we're just sitting and numbing out. This is how I unwind. Let me just ask you, do you feel filled up after you do that? Like, do you truly feel like, wow, I am so refreshed and refilled and ready for tomorrow? Not usually. Not usually at all, right? So what are you going to intentionally do towards the end of your day before going to sleep? And here's where we wonder, why do I lay in bed and I can't fall asleep? Hello, because my body and my brain was doing other stuff all the way up until then. So what is it that would be refilling for you? Now, in this section of the day, yes, if you have a spouse, it may involve them as well, right? Like, then that's okay. But it's not time to, we've already said this, be working all the way up till you go to bed. It's not time to necessarily even be doing chores around the house up until you go to bed. I also don't think it's time to be in front of a screen until you go to bed, unless it's depending on what you're doing on your screen, right? But what are the things that you can do in that time before you go to bed that are going to refill your body, mind, spirit? Just like our phone has to go back in the charger, so does our body and our mind, right? And our heart. Guard our heart. Remember we talked yesterday from Proverbs. Okay, so part of I want you to be looking at, your homework today is going to be, what time of my day do I need to be asking the question, what time is it? So maybe for you, it's this evening refill. And so that's going to help you to start saying no to some of those distractions or other demands or even expectations you may have to teach other people. After this certain time, I'm done. And that's okay, right? That is okay. Okay, in the middles, we have our pour outs. So we've refilled, now we pour out, okay? So this one I call our AM pour out. I'll tell you what they are in a minute. This one I call our day pour out. And this one I call our PM pour out. And again, based on what you do, based on if you have a full-time job and then a business on the side, based on if you have kids at home all day long, some of you may be homeschooling as well as doing other things. These are not going to all be equal. I just drew them equally, but they're not necessarily equal, right? But what I teach you is to build an ideal week where you go, okay, here's what these blocks look like each day of my week. So in an AM pour out, we are pouring out into family and household things. Right? So there are things that need to happen, even if you don't have kids at home or a spouse at home. Maybe there's animals that need to be fed. Maybe there's mail that needs to be gone through. Maybe there's something that needs to be ready before you go out the door. What are the things that need to happen to start the day well? Okay. PM pour out is kind of like as I'm winding up the day. So for those of you with kids at home, maybe this is when they're coming home from school. If you have a spouse, when they're coming home from work or done with work, like what are the things that need to happen to end the day well? It's going to maybe include dinner. What am I doing in the evening? How am I taking care of the things that came in from the day? Am I doing some kind of like, quick tidy ups or cleaning, things and stuff like that? And then our day pour out is where the majority of our work is. So for a lot of you, that day pour out is going to be a bigger chunk of time because you're working, so like the example that was given earlier is working 8 to 4. Okay, so that's your day pour out, right? And then what I'm going to do is help you get really specific inside of that, how we, do that time. But here's again, what you want to pay attention to. What is it time for, right? If it's time to be pouring out into my family or household, right? For me, that issue was more in this PM pour out, right? It was time for all that stuff, but I was still trying to do business stuff. How well does that work? The pot boils over, the kid melts down at the table needing my homework, I misspelled the text that goes out to my client and my hubby asked me a question and I said yes to, I don't even know what I just said yes to. Okay. Because I was trying to cram all these things and multitask into this one block and it wasn't time for that. Right? Or maybe it's during the work time when you're off, doing all these other things, doing errands, doing laundry, doing this, doing that, and really not getting a whole lot of work done. And then you're trying to cram it in these other parts of your day. Okay. So here's where, when you ask the question, what is it time for? It is really going to help you with that focus. Right. And then inside the CEO impact bonus, and I'll finish up and we'll tie into that in just a minute. This is where we get really clear on, okay, now inside this block, what are the things I need to give my time to, especially this day pour out, right? Because we're looking to grow our business, to increase our impact and our income. So what are the things I'm giving time to? How often am I giving them time to? And, what's the order of things that needs to happen such that I'm not reinventing the wheel? I'm not overcomplicating things. I'm not doing a bunch of extra things or excess things and things like that. But it first starts with knowing what is it time for? And when you know what it's time for, guess what? You also know what it's not time for, right? Okay, so right now, I want you to drop in the chat. I'm going to give you the first piece of homework right now. Drop in the chat, which of these times of your day, which of these blocks, do you commit to starting to ask the question, what is it time for? So that you are not so easily distracted during that time and the purpose behind that time. Is it one of those refills, morning or evening refill? Is it one of the pour outs, AM pour out, day pour out, PM pour out? I'm seeing evening refill, right? Any of them, right? I mean, we should essentially be asking this question all day long, but it's going to start with asking in one place. Evening refill. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of that. Okay, evening refill for me too. All right. And here's the thing. When we know what it's time for, then we can show up fully present to that, right? And then what we do is you start building routines and workflows and those things inside of those such that we're being intentional with that time that we have. And everything isn't bleeding over. And again, life isn't taking over business and business isn't taking over life, or we're not just checking boxes and showing up in our office for 5, 6, 8 hours a day and not really seeing the growth. Who wants to waste time like that? A morning refill and evening refill. Yeah. Okay. AM pour out through evening refill, right? All the above, right? All of the above. Okay. So here is your homework. Well, let me just say one thing before I give you your homework. I think oftentimes our response to, and the reason we multitask is because we're afraid. We're afraid there's not going to be time to get it all done. So I got to do it quick now. And maybe you don't think of it as being fear, right? But like essentially we are, again, afraid we're not going to have enough time if I don't do this now, if I don't try to super compact all of my time. And really we end up, we don't end up where we want to be. God's called us to approach our time with faith, right? And we have that certainty, which is what faith is, right? Faith is being certain of what I can't see. Then we start seeing the results. Why? Because of all the work that we do? No, because of God's promises and his faithfulness, right? What does he say in Galatians 6:9? In due time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. When it is time to plant seeds, that farmer is saying, it is time for planting seeds. It's not time for fixing my equipment, even though it needs to be fixed. It's not time for, repairing the barn. It's not time for, whatever the other farmer tasks are. They know what it's time for. And by doing what it's time for and being consistent with that, they're going to see that harvest, right? And we have this expectancy just like they do. Okay, so here's your homework, right? This is going to be inside the community. Again, I encourage you guys, come inside the community where we are taking this stuff off of just, great ideas on paper or in our head. And we're actually starting to put rubber, meets the road. Okay, so here's the question. In which time block are you going to specifically start asking today the question, what is it time for? So if you were one of those all the aboves, that's great. I want you to ask it in every block, but I want you to pick one to focus on first. Because what you're going to find is the more consistent you get with it in one, it will have a ripple effect into the other areas. And how is this question going to help you, A, not multitask in that block? So think about what are the other things I'm trying to throw in this time of my day? And how does that work for me? Does everything turn out like the movies, or is it a little bit of a mess? Right? Am I a little stressed and frazzled and people are getting the short end of the stick and woo, watch out, right? So what is the time block that you're going to commit to starting with? How is this going to help you not multitask? And what is it going to allow you to focus on? I want you to think about what is it time for in that time block and identify maybe 1, 2, 3 things at most that really need your time and attention during that time. Okay. Now you are welcome to do it as a video and post it. So for those of you who got video feedback yesterday, I just use Loom on my computer. It just allows me to record it. You can just record it with your phone and just put it up there just like you do any other ones, just in the comments. Or if you prefer to type it out, that's fine. Okay. But I want to show up as the CEO and do that. Okay. All right. Now, some of you are planning to join me. So we are going to hop off of here, take a quick bathroom break. It is 1:06 on my clock. I will meet you back in here at 1:10. Now, let me just say one thing. If you are still here, if you're still here and you're live, okay, if you're still here in your replay, you can still go ahead and complete the application and then you and I will connect later. But if you're still here live, that tells me that this is resonating with you and that you want to be that CEO who is intentional with her time, who knows what it's time for, and who has the things in place to be able to do that, right? And wants to be doing this with God and not just make it another time management thing like the rest of the world. So even if you haven't filled out the application yet because you didn't know what it was, you didn't make time for it yet, you weren't sure, well, I don't know. I'm just going to invite you right now. You can fill out the application later. Come. Okay. So now we're down to 3 minutes. Okay. 3 minutes, same Zoom link. Okay. I'm just going to hop off, use the bathroom, get a quick drink. You guys do the same. We'll pop back on here for about 30 minutes or so. And I can't wait to share with you guys. So I will see you in just a few minutes.